for a short time.
We are live.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to be able to wear my black hat tonight. Most of the speakers are from the Black Hat Group, and they're the group that drafted the Bill of Rights. They're working on a constitution. So there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. But we are a very varied group with a lot of interests, different skills, but with the great desire to make Alberta a truly faith, family, and freedom country. So that is our aim. I think I would like to start the evening with what is most important, and that's recognizing our Lord and Savior. So Tanner, could I have you speak?
If you would like to bow with me, we will offer a quick word. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this opportunity to gather together tonight. We thank you for each and every person that you have brought into this hall, and we pray, Father, that you would bless our conversation this evening. Lord, we pray that our activities and our information would be accurate and correct and would be used to honor, glorify you, and to also advance, Lord, the province of Alberta. We pray that you would bless us and bless our enterprise, Father, and go before us in all that we do. We pray these things in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, Tanner. My name is Corrine Thacker, by the way, just so if any of you don't know me, I've got my better half in the front as well, Tom. So our first speaker, I was going over his biography, and Art is a retired lawyer, but what struck me was he was married the same year we were. So him and his wife have been married 55 years. So Arthur was born in Calgary. He's an Albertan. Started his careers with his wife. Shirley was a nurse. I was a nurse. Art was a realtor. They did well with the National Energy Program and was bought in by the feds. But then those who went through it will remember one day when the phones were ringing and the next they stopped. Rigs were lined up at the U.S. border heading south. So he applied and was admitted to the University of Vic Law School and graduated in 1987. He practiced law in Surrey, BC, till he retired. And I think that's good that BC didn't corrupt you too much. Anyway. So his practice was primarily in business law. He acted for several companies, doing business in several different countries, but mostly China. And this brought up my interest if you're working in China. And he said he worked there 6 months out of each year for about 10 years. So he's got an insider view. He's lived it, and I'd like to introduce Arthur Skagen, who retired in 2020 and has since become personally involved with the Black Hats and making a difference in our province. Arthur.
I don't have much to say. I asked to speak a few words. I'll get it there. Is that better? Okay, sorry. Thanks. That's okay. I have troubles talking sometimes. Anyway, I asked Corrine if I could make a few statements tonight. I don't want it to be long-term because I want you to listen to what these speakers have to say. I've heard them before and they're excellent. I'll just be a couple of minutes and something that I want you to really think about. Speak louder? Yeah. I was always a solicitor, never a barrister, so it wasn't built on my voice. I am a member of the Black Hats. I'm a resident of Medicine Hat. I was born in Calgary and practiced law for many years. I asked to speak for a few minutes because of Mr. Carney's recent announcement that Canada has agreed to a new strategic alliance with China. I don't know if people have really considered what a strategic alliance actually means. For me, alarm bells are going off nonstop. A strategic alliance has been defined as a formal agreement between countries to collaborate on shared objectives across multiple areas such as security, defense, economics, and science without the formal commitment for a military alliance. As Corrine said, I spent a fair amount of time in China between 2008 and 2018. I was in China for anywhere from 3 to 6 months per year, acting on behalf of Canadian clients doing business in China. And what I learned in doing that is we need to be very, very cautious in all of the relationships we have with people that are different than we are. I don't know how else to say it. So a little bit of background history. The Communist Party has ruled China since 1949. It's the only government most Chinese people have ever known. That doesn't mean that the majority of Chinese people are members of the Communist Party. They're not. But they are resigned to how things are and how they live under an iron fist. It's all they've ever experienced. We sort of take it for granted. The Chinese government has an extensive history of interference in Canada. That includes espionage, compromise, of politicians and government officials, election interference, transnational repression and control of individuals and companies that are connected to either China or people or the government. In 1925, a parliamentary inquiry concluded that China was, quote, the most active perpetuator of state-based foreign interference targeting Canada's democratic institutions, end of quote. The Canadian government has been tracking these activities since 1986. The U.S. government has said these activities are a threat to the United States. It's worth noting that those statements were made well before Mr. Trump was president. We also know that China maintains active police stations in Canada to monitor the companies and citizens of China that are living here in Canada. And one of the things that I don't know if you remember or not, do you remember the two Michaels? Yes. Yeah. They were two Canadians in China who were arrested and jailed in 2018. They were arrested as retaliation the day after Canada arrested a Chinese spy and charged him with espionage. They were arrested and placed in jail. They were never charged with anything. They were released, they were held for 3 years, and then released the day after Canada dropped the charges against the Chinese spy. An interesting little tidbit is the Chinese fella spent his 3 years under house arrest in his home. The two Michaels were in Chinese jail. And I assure you that Chinese jails aren't like Canadian jails. I also know two people who were arrested in China. I knew them well. They were doing business with some of my clients. They were Chinese citizens. They simply disappeared. I got a panic call asking if I knew anything, which of course I didn't. And 3 months later, their families were advised that they had been arrested, tried, found guilty, and executed. Their crime? They had a small investment company and had been paying a higher rate of return to their investors than had been approved by the government. That was apparently a capital crime. So, what's the benefit to have a strategic alliance with China? It's not the same as a simple trade partner. We've got trade partnerships all over the world and they work out fairly well. Why would we want a much closer relationship with China? It makes no sense. The real question is what do we need from China? And the answer is nothing. They have cheap manufactured goods, which are made by underpaid workers. We can't compete with those prices. But it also costs our people a lot of money. The manufacturing industry that we once had in Canada doesn't exist anymore. There's no jobs in that industry for any Canadian. Our government should be looking after our citizens first. What does China need from us? That's a different story. They need everything that we have. Raw materials, agriculture, oil and gas, the list goes on. And here's the last thing that I'm going to talk about with what they want. There's at least two things they want, and which are never talked about. But they're much easier to get from someone with whom you have a strategic alliance. One thing to recognize is that China and Canada geographically are about the same size. So is the US for that matter too. But the US and China, their weather's closer together than ours would be. We're still the frozen north, right? But what we do have is we have open spaces. Our population is about 3% of what China has. We are the little kid on the block when it comes to people, and we need to think about that. The other thing we need to think about is that we share a border with the US, which is 5,525 miles long, or in Canadian speak, 8,891 kilometers. I don't think the Americans are going to like that, but the Chinese really do like it. So I think this whole exercise with this agreement with China is a good example of why we as Albertans need to be in control of our own future and have our place in the world, not being dictated by somebody else. That's all I had to say.
We will have a question and answer period at the end of the speakers. But I must say that we were at an event this afternoon, and they said, well, what do you say to people? And they said, be seen, be short, and be seated. So Art, you did all that. Thank you. He told me he wasn't going to talk for long. Next, I'd like to call on Tanner Hnidey. Some of us have heard Tanner speak before. He's a great economist. But he was former Vice President of Economics for the Alberta Prosperity Project. He has an undergraduate degree in economics, is currently pursuing his Master's of Theology, and is a pastor in Lloydminster, where he lives with his wife, Paige. He has authored 3 books, is in the process of finishing his 4th, and is a frequent guest on TV shows and podcasts such as Talk Truth, The Sean Newman, and various others. So please help welcome Tanner.
He has his own microphone.
I don't hold the mic close enough to my face, so I have to have something hold it for me. Well, good evening, everyone. It is good evening. It's my pleasure. I don't usually get a response back. This is going to be a fun night. It's my pleasure to be with you. It's been some time since I've moseyed on down to Foremost, but the drive was lovely today. It was hot, and there were no animals on the road, and it was clear and sunny. What more could you ask for? So thank you for having me come and talk to you tonight. As Corrine mentioned, I live in Lloydminster. I'm from Lloydminster. I was born in Lloydminster, and I currently live in Lloydminster with my wife, Paige. I have an undergraduate degree in economics, and I am currently pursuing my Master's of Theology from Chafer Seminary. And with that, I am currently pastoring, or being one of the pastors at my local church, as well as TAing various classes in my master's program. This means that most of my days now are spent reading and writing and speaking and teaching and studying. These are the activities that I enjoy, to be entirely honest. These are the activities that I love, and they are the activities that convinced me to pursue an education, a degree in economics. For some reason, for whatever reason, at a young age, I discovered that I had this most unfortunate passion for politics and for policy. And I would, being one of the coolest kids in class, stay up very late watching old videos of economists talking to, students at their lectures and so on. And I said to myself, what these economists talk about makes sense. The principles that they are communicating make sense. The principles that they're teaching make sense. And I would like to one day teach these same principles to others as well. And so I went to the university and I completed my degree. The problem was, as I was nearing my completion, or as I was nearing the program's completion, I discovered what you already know, which is that most economists are neither teachers nor speakers. And for the few economists who are teachers and speakers, they are so boring and dry you wish that they would neither teach nor speak. Which meant that the few economic jobs that were suited to my particular skill set out of university were scarce. And so I took a job hauling grain. I drove truck, pulled Super Bs for a little while I waited for more available and applicable opportunities to rise. And after starting a social media or a page or two, an opportunity did rise. As Karine mentioned, I was recruited to become the emerging Alberta Prosperity Project's Vice President of Economics. And it was here that my foray, my adventure into public speaking began. I wanted to do what most economists couldn't be bothered to do, which is make an otherwise excruciating discipline exciting and interesting for audiences all around the province. And so I was speaking and speaking and speaking at hundreds of different events. And I would talk about a selection of topics like oil and gas and taxation and monetary policy and I don't know what else, trade, landlocking, and so on and so on and so on. I also talked about pensions. I was actually talking about pensions a few months ago, almost a year ago now, here in Foremost. And that's the topic, pensions is the topic that I spoke most frequently about. I traveled up north, I traveled down south, I traveled east, I traveled west, I traveled all over the province of Alberta talking about pensions, more specifically about the Canadian Pension Plan and the proposed Alberta Pension Plan. And I would present arguments for and against the proposal and try and produce something which was reasonable and understandable to as many different audiences as possible. So I would tinker with my delivery and my speech to try and make the information provided as memorable as possible. But I didn't just want the information that I was preaching to be memorable, I wanted it to be useful as well. And as this first crusade continued on, I started to ask myself, is what I'm doing really useful? Is what I am doing really of any use at all? I knew that I was talking a lot. That's true. My wife certainly knew that I was talking a lot, right? But for all of this talk, which was plenty, my conviction, my thought, was that the harvest itself was few. So here I am talking and talking and talking about the pension, and the more I do so, the more that I remember the words of Solomon. Right? You know the famous verse in Ecclesiastes, what has been is what will be, and what will be or what will be done has already been done. There's nothing new under the sun. I said those same things to myself after reading the words of Solomon, and I was talking to my wife, and I would go, look at all that we're doing. Look at all of this talking, all of this driving, all of this activity. We go all over the province. We never stay at home for very long. We're moving here. We're moving there. We're going up and down and all over the place, talking to audiences of various sizes. Are we really making a difference? Maybe we could talk to 3. Maybe we could talk to 4. Maybe we could talk to 5 million people. But at the end of it, I said to myself, I don't know if it would make any difference at all. Even if we talk to millions of people in Alberta about the Canadian Pension Plan and the proposed Alberta Pension Plan, I don't know that anyone is going to do anything about it anyways. So then I emerged from this enterprise with a new political philosophy, not a correct one, but a new one, which was, even if I worked as hard as I could, which I was, and even if I spoke as often as I could, which I was, and even if I spoke as eloquently as I could, which I was trying to do, I said to myself, the bureaucratic machine is so titanic, and its mechanisms are so convoluted, that it's unlikely that any of my efforts will be ultimately significant at all. That was my conclusion. Speaking engagements decreased. I moved more full-time to Lloyd. I started taking classes for my master's in theology, and I moved to a more regular format of living in town. While my wife and I prepared to, have children and prepared to buy a home and prepared to work for the lives that our parents had before us. And to be entirely honest, this was a good move. This was like this whole activity of almost a retreat from speaking was a blessing because it rescued me from this artificial world of politics and it forced me into the real world of work. I was finally unplugged from this theoretical reality of policy and numbers and political newspeak back and forth, and I was introduced to an actual life of labor. That's good. That was great. Now, my wife and I work as hard as we can. We are neither lazy nor, I hope, incompetent. We're careful with our money. I'm Ukrainian, after all, but not insufferably so. We try not to be cheap. We are eager and we are engaged and we're educated individuals with modest dreams and a passion to succeed, like a lot of other people, like almost everyone else, like everybody else in this room. And our aims aren't outrageous, our desires aren't extravagant. We are simply two people with common goals, working as hard as we can to try and materialize that vision. That's the hope. But now we've pursued these goals for more than a few years. Paige and I are coming up to our anniversary here on August 15th. We've been married for more than, a few months. We've pursued these ideals, these goals, these hopes, these dreams for more than a little while, and I'm going to tell you the truth. After having done so, I'm going to tell you what we've learned over the course of our marriage thus far concerning these hopes and dreams and goals. We are, as a couple, even though she's not here tonight, she normally is, we are, as a couple, ready to confirm what every young Canadian, and every young Albertan for that matter, already knows. Her and I, and so many others like us, can honestly say that we have experienced what all of these other Canadians and Albertans have experienced as well. What I mean to say is, in spite of our strongest efforts to purchase a home, we find that in Canada, it's practically impossible to purchase a home. And in spite of our strongest efforts to save for retirement, we discover that in Canada, it's practically impossible to save for retirement. And in spite of our strongest efforts to financially provide for a family, we find that in Canada, it is basically impossible to financially provide for a family. You can summarize and say that in spite of our strongest efforts to get ahead in this country right now, it is impossible to get ahead. That is what we've learned. Here we are, like we're spinning our wheels, right? As fast as we can. We're just pouring power into the ground, and we are getting absolutely nowhere in return. Here we have all of this energy, and we're transferring this energy to production to the best of our abilities. There's no traction, though, like none. There is zero traction for Albertans, for Canadians at large, to be honest, in this country, especially if you're younger. Zero. We're doing all that we can, but you can't hook up any sort of give and oomph to get going forward. For every dollar you make, so much of it is taken away. For every little bit you save or try to save, so much of it is taken away. For every job you have, the money you make there, so much of it is taken away. I'm not saying we're poor. We're not poor. Like Paige and I, we're doing fine. The Lord provides very graciously. What I am saying, though, is that the old opportunities that a man had in this country to elevate himself have disappeared. They're gone. They might have been here in the 60s, they might have been here in the 70s, maybe they were here in the 80s or the 90s, I don't know, I wasn't here then. But I can promise you that they're not here now. My wife and I, my friends and I, my community and I are living proof of it. It's not just me who has this grievance. It's not just my wife and I who are working in this capacity to try and get ahead and struggling to do so. Here I have all of these friends in Lloydminster, right? As a pastor at the church, I work with a lot of young adults. We have like 50 or 60 in a group. It's great. Solid group, solid core. And each one of them are hardworking, humble, energetic, active individuals. They are not incompetent. They aren't lazy. They do their best. And all of them have jobs, whether it be counseling or constructing or teaching or laboring, whatever it is. All of them are working. None of them are sitting idle at home, but almost all of them are forced to live in their parents' home. None of them are idle. All of them are working. They're not wasteful with money. They aren't ridiculous with their finances. And yet almost every single one, not all, but close, to every single one of them is forced to stay at their parents' home. There is no shame in that in this day and age. That's the norm. It is normal to live with your parents. What's not normal now, right? What's the outlier is not living with your parents. That's considered strange in this day and age because of the economy in this country. And you can prove it with quotes, right? Here's one, quote, "A new global analysis suggests Canada's major metros are among the hardest places on earth for young people." Hardest places on earth for young people to buy their first home, with Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal ranking near the bottom of a 70-city affordability index. This study from a UAE-based developer, Bloom Holding, estimates the typical first-time buyer in Vancouver enters the market at age 46. 46, while those in Toronto and Montreal reach home ownership around 40 and 39 respectively. That is being pushed to smaller centers as well, and I promise you that age is not going down. It's not like, it was at 40 in Toronto and now it's moving down to the 30s. It's the opposite. Completely opposite. Do you know how many people I talk to that say there's no way I'm ever going to buy a home in this country, ever? They have just resolved, they have just resigned to the fact that there is no way they're going to purchase a home in this country, ever. And they've accepted it. I'll rent forever, I'll do this forever, whatever, but I'll never own a home because it is so far beyond any sort of financial opportunity or goal that they have just resigned themselves to the reality of whatever, renting forever, maybe moving, who knows? Now, I blame this manifest crisis, and anyone who says there isn't a crisis is lying. It's very obvious that there is a crisis, and I blame it on, lots of factors, to be honest. Taxes are disproportionate, you know that. Inflation is gigantic, you know that. Spending is rampant, you know that. Everybody knows these things. But as a general principle, the younger generations, they just can't earn enough money. They are not, even though they're working hard, and they are working hard, they cannot level out with the cost of living. It's just not possible as it stands in this country right now. And the money that a lot of the younger generations do make, and this is true for all Canadians for that matter, much of the money that we do make is then confiscated by government and is frivolously wasted by bureaucrats who couldn't give even the slightest care about the people that they claim to serve. You and me. So the Canadian Pension Plan is just one example of this delinquent economic activity, in my opinion. And I don't think I need to prove that to you, to be entirely honest. I really don't. I don't need to explain to you. I especially don't need to explain to those who are right now collecting pension checks that the Canadian Pension Plan is ultimately a ripoff. It is a ripoff. And if you don't believe me, just wait. Just wait until you start taking your pension, and you will realize that it isn't fair. The amount of money that you receive back in pension payments is nowhere near acceptable when you consider how much money you sent into the pension while you were working. Here you have all of these seniors who are right now harvesting the fruits of their decades-long contributions to the pension plan, and they've discovered that their harvest is rotten. You sent hundreds of thousands of dollars into the Canadian Pension Plan, and you are now lucky to earn tens of thousands of dollars back. That is not a legitimate payout when this program is called a pension. There are some who say, it's a social insurance plan, really, and that's true. It is structured much more like a social insurance plan. But even then, I would consider it to be a very poor social insurance plan with a very poor payout, considering how proud it is when it discusses its earnings and its securities and its peace of mind that it gives to supposedly all of these Canadians. And you can prove it with numbers, right? Let's suppose that you earn $60,000 a year, which is a very reasonable estimation for a lot of Canadian couples. You're earning $60,000 a year. Now, year over year, between yourself and your employer, you will contribute an annual, if you're making $60,000 a year, you will contribute an annual-ish $6,700 to the Canadian Pension Plan. $6,700 in year 1, in year 2, in year 3, in year 4, if you keep that at that $60,000 level of income. You pay half of it, your employer pays half of it. That's what's contributed to the CPP. Now, let's suppose that you do that for 40 years, which seems to be, the shortest amount of time that Canadians have to work if they want to be able to retire, if they're able to retire at all. So you work for 40 years, contributing some $6,700 with your employer to the Canadian Pension Plan every year. At the end of those 40 years, when it comes time to pull your pension, say at age 65, you will receive from the Canadian Pension Plan a whopping $1,800 per month. No, it's less than that. Now that I do the math, it's $1,500 a month. You'll receive a whopping $1,500 a month, $18,000 a year. Total. You contribute hundreds of thousands of dollars over your working life to the Canadian Pension Plan. When it comes time to collect your check, you will receive $18,000 total every year from the plan. That's all. Now, my displeasure with this plan, apart from the fact that its personal returns are abysmal, right, completely abysmal and unacceptable, is that if we didn't have to send money to that plan, if I didn't have to send, and my employer didn't have to send that $3,700 each year to the pension plan for a total of $6,700 to the plan every year, we could instead send it to a very conservative performing mutual fund, earning returns of 8%, and watch that compound year over year over year over year, so that after working 40 years, if I decided to go to that mutual fund and pull some cash from that mutual fund, obeying the 4% rule, which is very famous, I would be able to comfortably pull not $1,500 every month in pension. I could instead pull $5,800 every month in pension. So annually, I wouldn't be earning $18,000 in pension. I'd be earning $70,000 in pension, and I would never jeopardize my principal if I followed that rule. You have $70,000 a year on one hand here with a mutual fund investment using the same numbers as what you send to the CPP, or you have $18,000 a year here. That is a difference of $50,000 every year, year over year over year. $1,500 a month with the CPP, $5,800 a month with your own personal plan. That's a difference of what, like $4,500 every month. So the difference isn't just microscopic. It isn't just small. The difference is magnanimous. It's huge. There is this gulf between the Canadian Pension Plan and what a proper pension plan would provide you with. And so now you see why I've lodged my complaint. Now you see why I'm upset. How are we as Albertans, whether young or old, supposed to get ahead in life? How are we, in this case, supposed to retire? How are we supposed to do so when we're forced to pay a decent amount of money into this Canadian pension plan, lots of money actually, which will then give us so little money back? I have to send that money to the CPP if I'm employed, even though its returns are anemic. Whereas if I were able to send that to a mutual fund or a different sort of investment like that, maybe I just buy gold, I don't know. The difference in wealth is astronomical. And to be entirely honest, I think it's so shameful. And I wouldn't have said this before. I am now because I'm tired of it. To their shame, there are a lot of Canadians who just don't care. They would watch, and they are watching now, Generations being pushed off the cliff and into a canyon of total debt. And they are completely silent about it because it means they're guaranteed their few $100s a month check. Not saying they don't need that check. Not saying they don't need the CPP. They paid into it. They do deserve it. Just as the rest of you do who paid into that pension. But look at what's happening to the country. All of this financial nonsense, all of this monetary ridiculousness is dragging the country deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into debt. And your children and your children's children and their children are the ones who are shackled with it. They're the ones that are going to suffer. You know, from what I've heard, Canada wasn't so bad, you know, in the 70s or the 80s, or, I mean, national energy policy, of course, but the 60s, you could get ahead. You could buy nice homes. You could live on a decent, you know, with a decent job, you could live quite well. It's not the same story today. These younger generations are being crushed. It's like there's a millstone around their neck, and they've been thrown over into this financial abyss. There's absolutely no way as it stands for them right now to get out of it. They work hard, they save, the cost of living is so high. And the cost of living in the country, with its taxation, with its monetary policies, with its pension policies like this, is so high that even if you earn what is considered normal, it isn't enough. So then you might be wondering, well, why do we refuse to change? Why is the country why are the people so stalled? Why are they so scared to do anything? And that's the answer. It's fear. They're fearful. They're afraid. They're afraid. Afraid of losing their pension. Afraid of missing payments. I don't know. Afraid of making less. Fear of perhaps realizing that there is, in this example, a system that is superior to the Canadian pension plan, which they have defended for so very long. Maybe there is a system, a pension system, which is both conceivable and feasible and is superior to what we have in the present. That's my argument. I think there is one. Here is just one proposed pension plan that I think makes economic sense. I think this is a proposal which increases our earnings without compromising the pension's integrity. Here is what it looks like. First, it starts with the principle of private property, which is a principle that we've neglected in the country for far too long. There are no property rights in the Charter. It's disgraceful. It means that the whole document is worthless. No property rights, well then what of it? Everything reduces, in this case, to property. So you start with the principle of private property. And my belief, and your belief, is that your money, is your family's money, is your children's money, is not a stranger's money, is not everyone else's money. It's yours. You earned it. It's not for someone else to decide how to use. It's not for somebody else to claim. Now, right now, everything that you send, the CPP, slides down the same gullet and goes into the same financial stomach as everybody else's contributions. And it's there that it's promptly digested and, mixed into this homogeneous soup. But this proposal that I'm giving you right now, this new pension proposal, instead says, direct your monthly contributions, direct your monthly pension contributions into a personal, private account. One for each Albertan. So, one for me, Tanner's retirement fund. One for Karine, wherever she is, Karine's retirement fund. One for Tom, Tom's retirement fund. And so on and so on and so on. Or maybe spouses have a joint account. That's beside the point for the moment. One for each Albertan. Your neighbor doesn't send his money into your account. You don't send your money into your neighbor's account. And you don't together pool your funds in a joint account. It's your money and it's your account. And as you continue to save and send money into this pension account, the APP, and by that I mean the Alberta Pension Plan, in this case, or Alberta Pension Plan Manager, invests your contributions on your behalf. And they have one purpose. They have one task, which is to maximize profit without undue risk. That is the only purpose of a pension manager. It's to earn you as much money as possible without engaging in unnecessary difficulty or unnecessary risk, unnecessary danger. We want you to have as much money as possible, that is guaranteed when you retire. That's the goal. It is not to please masters in government. That isn't its purpose. It's not to push a social agenda. That isn't its purpose. Its purpose is to earn as much money as possible without engaging in unnecessary risk. This is part of the reason why the funds are to be held in your pension account until you're, say, 60 or 65-ish years old. Again, the actual number is trivial, but let's say it's 60 or 65. You see, it's difficult for a pension manager to optimize a long-term investing strategy without some measure of stability. And so, by keeping your money in your account until you reach retirement age, 60 or 65, there is absolutely no danger of frivolously spending that fund in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s or 50s, whatever it might be, before the investment reaches its appropriate maturity. And once it reaches its appropriate maturity and it comes time to cash your savings, then this plan, your money, because remember, the money is your money with this proposal, becomes particularly exciting. This is where I'm most encouraged, most excited about such a proposal. So if you and your employer send $6,700 a month, a year together, into a modestly performing mutual fund, $6,700 being the same amount of money that gets sent to the CPP right now. If you and your employer send $6,700 a year to the, in this case, new pension plan proposal, into a mutual fund that generates 8% return in investment, after 40 years of working, you will have some $1.74 million in your account. $1.74 million. That's the way compound interest works. It's practically a miracle. Now, if I wanted to carbon copy the CPP, I would say, well, when it comes time to pull that pension, when it comes time to pull money from that fund, the amount you're able to pull will be determined by 3 factors. How long did you work? How much money did you make while working? And what age do you decide to take your money from your fund? That is the way the CPP works right now. It's not as though the CPP says, Tom contributed $200,000 over his working life, and that $200,000 generated X amount of asset in interest. Therefore, that's what Tom gets back. Doesn't work like that. Instead, the people at the CPP say, how long did Tom work? Meaning, how long did he contribute to the CPP? How much money did Tom give to the CPP while he was working? And at what age does Tom decide to pull his pension? That's how the CPP calculates how much you as a pensioner are owed. But I do not want to mimic the CPP. I don't want to make it a carbon copy. I'm proposing that instead we improve the pension. And I think a constituent part of that improvement includes letting the pensioner, letting you choose what to do with your money. Because it's your money. It's not mine. It's not somebody else's. It's not the whole country's money. It's your money. So I am proposing the very radical notion right now, yes, in this modern age, of letting you do with your assets and your investment as you please. Here is what that looks like. So the first option, obviously, is simply you leave that $1.74 million invested in your account. You let it sit there. And then you withdraw cash at your preferred payment schedule. So, if you want to withdraw at a 4% rule, which keeps your principal, robust and certain, then, as mentioned, you would earn about $70,000 pre-tax every year. You could pull $70,000 from that account every year, and there'd be no danger of you destroying the principal. Now, you could pull 3%, maybe, pull less. You could pull 5%, you could pull more. It's up to you and to your families to decide. That's the point. You get to choose. But note, totally unlike the CPP, it would not be as though this account, this new account, just puffs into a wisp of smoke, bureaucratic smoke, when you pass away. You and I know that as it stands right now with the Canadian Pension Plan, once you die, that's it. It's not like your beneficiaries are given anything from the plan, a $2,500 payout. It's not as though the CPP says, so-and-so a person generated for us $1 million worth of investment income, therefore his or her descendants get that money. Nope. Once you pass, that's it. It's gone. Because it's a social insurance program more than a pension. With this proposal, it's different. When you pass, because the money is in your account and because it's your money in your account, the amount of money that is left in the account will be given to your beneficiaries. It'll be given to those that, those whom you designate to receive your estate after you pass. So if there's $1 million left in the account, then your descendants get $1 million. If there's 2 or 3 or 5 million in there, then your beneficiaries get that amount. So in my opinion, already it's superior to the CPP. But there's a second option concerning this pension plan proposal. You could, if you wanted to, take the money from your account, that $1.74 million. You could take that money from the account and you could purchase an annuity with it, a lifetime annuity. I'll explain in a moment, but this option might work best if you have no immediate heirs, if you expect to live a very, 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 very long time, or if you're particularly risk averse. If you're particularly risk averse, or don't have any immediate heirs, or simply want to choose this proposal, when it came time to cash your pension, you would take the $1.74 million and you would sell it, you would sell that account to the Alberta Pension Plan manager. They would purchase it, and in response, they would give you a guaranteed $7,000 every month, indexed to inflation, every year until you die. So you could take that $1.74 million, sell it to the Alberta Pension Plan manager in exchange for a guaranteed payout of $7,000 indexed to inflation every single month, no matter how long you live, for the rest of your years. On the one hand, you can keep it in the plan and take from it as you please and give the rest to your children. On the other hand, you could purchase an annuity, get a guaranteed $7,000-ish, or whatever the number is, per month, every month, for the rest of your life, but then when you pass away, there is nothing to give to anyone. It's gone. You sold your pension fund. The point is, the choice is yours. We want to introduce more free choice into the country, into the province. I want to introduce more free choice to Alberta. There's too much bureaucratic government overreach as it is. There is too much central planning and deciding for you what's best for you, as if they know you at all. What we should do instead is allow the individual and the family to choose what is best for the family, because no one knows what's best for the family like the family. You mean to tell me that a few bureaucrats in Ottawa or even in Edmonton know what's best for you down here in Foremost? Really? Really? Not a chance. You mean to tell me that they know what your children need for school supplies, what you need for retirement, what you need to live a comfortable life right now? Not a chance. Impossible. Impossible. No one's mind, except for Jesus Christ himself, is sophisticated enough to make those decisions. That's why it's up to the family to do so, not a central planner. So what I mean to say is the truth is that whatever, path one chooses to take with this proposed pension, whether you want to keep the money in your account and take it as you please or purchase an annuity with it, I think the path, whatever path it is superior to the path that we're all forced to walk with the CPP right now. I look at the financial situation, not only of my family, but of so many other families. I look at my own financial situation. I look at my friends' financial situation. I look at the city's financial situation. I look at the country's financial situation. And I say to myself, if a proposed pension plan like this, if outside the box thinking like this gives us one step towards greater financial freedom, even if it's just a small step, then it is more and more and more and more a step that we're ready and willing to take. You know, here are so many Canadians, here are so many Albertans who are right now drowning in debt. Like they're swallowed up by taxation. They are consumed by inflation, totally shackled by the economic disturbance in this country. The whole country is drowning in debt. And then that little bit of money that a lot of families have left over after tax has been taken and groceries have been paid and all of this, all of these expenses have hopefully been met. Still more the government decides to send to a pension in order to save for you for retirement, only that when you come to retirement, you realize they've hardly saved for you at all. You get just about nothing. And so if a different pension plan, lets us take even the smallest step, as I mentioned, towards greater financial freedom, then it is a step that I want to take. It is a step that I expect everybody here is ready to take. I told you that I wanted these speeches and these discussions to be more than memorable. I want these speeches and these discussions to be useful. But they're only going to be useful if we apply this hope actively and physically and persistently and together work in our communities for this better future. Hard work, unbelievably hard work, strenuous work, but work which is worthwhile. And the truth is, I've made my peace, with the fact that these speeches might not amount to much. Just as everyone else here has to make their peace with the fact that their work might not amount to much either. Perhaps you visit 100 homes and 2 people want to talk. Maybe you visit 1,000 people and 10 of them sign up to, help with this entire enterprise. Maybe you chat with 100,000 people and you're laughed out of room after room after room after room after room. But I have resolved, my wife and I have resolved, and I hope that everybody here has resolved, that if our generation's going to go down with the ship, if it's going to sink with the ship, then we are going to do everything we can to save that ship from sinking. Maybe we succeed, maybe we don't. But at the very least, we have a moral obligation to our friends and to our families to try. A new pension, one which recognizes and upholds this principle, this precious principle of private property, is just one of the ways that we can improve the prospects of our financial future, and I think we owe it to ourselves to do so, not only to ourselves, though, also to our spouses, also to our children, also to our grandchildren, and our parents, and our grandparents, and all of the generations in Alberta to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanner. I so appreciate his speaking because no one's going to go to sleep when he's talking. And what he has outlined is our hopes for our future and for our kids and our grandkids. Now comes sort of the feature part. We've got the Payne folks. So I'm going to read a couple of bios here, because these guys have been very, very shy as far as giving me anything to say about them. But LaVar Payne, we go a long way back. He was elected Member of Parliament for the Federal Government of Canada from 2008 to 15 with Prime Minister Stephen Harper, serving Medicine Hat Brook's constituency. During his time as Member of Parliament, he had the privilege of serving on several committees, including Public Safety, National Defence, Agriculture, Aboriginal, Northern Affairs, and prior to his election to the House of Commons, he worked for Federal Minister Monty Solberg. I remember those days too, as Special Assistant and President of the constituency. Previously, he was Manager at Human Resources for 27 years at Methanex Corporation, methanol manufacturing plant in Medicine Hat. My career commenced with Canada Trust, a financial institution, an accountant, and an office manager. So he's got much experience and many skills. Now, are you and your son going to do this together?
I'm going to crack at it first.
You do it first. Okay. Age before beauty.
Well, thank you for that.
I'll get out of your light.
I just want to make sure that, yeah. Thanks, Green. No, we're going to work with this one. You don't mind if I stand on the side a little bit? Anyway, I've had the opportunity to listen to Tanner a few times, and I really like his idea of this Alberta Pension Plan. The one thing that he has said a few times is that, in fact, the current Canada Pension Plan, Albertans pay somewhere, I believe, around $3 billion extra into the fund, which Alberta residents, seniors who are collecting CPP, never get back. So that's quite upsetting when we got $3 billion every year going in that never comes back to Albertans. So the other day I happened to be sitting down with my brother-in-law, and we were chit-chatting and talking about the pension plan and so on. And I said, $3 billion, that's a lot of money. I wonder what that would do for current Alberta pensioners. Well, how the hell would I find that out? So instead of asking my wife how many seniors there are in Alberta over the age of 65, I actually asked Google. And Google told me there was 741,000 seniors over the age of 65. So I made an assumption, maybe right or wrong, that every one of them was getting Canada Pension Plan. So that $3 billion, well, how much more could they actually get if they divvied that up to the 741,000 individuals? So I got my calculator out and did my calculating, and guess what? They could each get at least $300 a month more every year. Not bad, not big one, but certainly better. And not only that, there was somewhere between $200 and $300 million left over. But they would get 300 now. That might pay for their gas. Some more groceries, going out for dinner, much more expensive dinner than you took your wife out for. Anyway, I found that quite interesting, and I just had to kind of talk about that. I made another assumption. I don't know if it's right or wrong, because it certainly doesn't touch up with the numbers Tanner was talking about getting $1,500. I used an assumption that on the average, maybe seniors were getting like $800 a month from Canada Pension. So you know what? If that was the case, and they got $300 a month more, that's like a 40% increase. Nice. Anyway, I just thought I would touch on that before I get into all my things that I really get upset about. So I have to try and make sure that I don't get too angry. And as you can see, we're thanking the Liberals for all of their bills that they've been putting through the last number of years. There's some that I don't necessarily talk about, but there are several of them that, in fact, Prime Minister Carney decided that he was not going to repeal, and that was C-48 and C-69. Those are very important bills to Alberta, in particular in Saskatchewan. So, having said that, we're moving on to Bill C-2. And that one it's a scary one. And you know what? Those crazy guys in Ottawa, all the Liberals, and support, of course, by the National Dumb Party, the NDP. And you know what? If they decide they want to open your mail, they can do that. They don't need to get any judge to say, yeah, you can open his mail. They can do that on their own. There's no definite judicial oversight. And of course, as part of that bill, I don't know if anybody has heard of FinTrack. Anybody heard of FinTrack? Oh, yeah, a few hands there. Yeah, so you know what? That's so that they can track your money. And now, $10,000, you want to spend $10,000, they're going to track you. And that is not a good thing, that they're already after your money. And of course, as you can see, in addition to that, and it's been talked about over and over for the last year, ID, digital ID. That is coming, and that is going to be devastating. Because, and my friend Art talked a bit about China, and some of you may have heard about the social, what is it? Social credit score, yes. So that will be part of this whole process. So if you get nasty with Mr. Carney, they might just freeze your bank account. Oh, they did that already, didn't they? They froze bank accounts. They're probably going to do that again. Anyway, moving right along, I'm getting myself upset about this. Oh, Bill C-8, yes. So C-8, a companion to Bill C-2. So Bill C-8, they don't like what you're doing. They can keep track of you, what's going on the internet, because they can. They can surveil you, and guess what? They can kick you off the internet. So if you had kids at home, and your kids want to apply for a job, and they say, go onto the internet and fill in your application, your kids ain't going to be able to do that either. This is just one more step along the road that these corrupt liberals and the NDP have been working on for a long time. Because the NDP is basically a communist party, and the liberals are well on their way to that as well. So, and of course you can't use your phone either, of course, once they kick you off. Again, no judicial oversight, and no way you can appeal this stuff. And part of the reason you can't appeal it, who are the judges? Probably 98% of them are liberal. And what have they done? They have supported the liberal government every step of the road, which is it's totally disgusting. Bill C-9, oh yes. So I don't know how many people here go to church or read the Bible. You know what? You quote things out of the Bible, and they can throw you in jail. Not only that, they could throw you away forever. There's nothing in the legislation that would stop them from taking your life, taking your home, taking everything that you have. And I'm sure Tanner is quite aware of that, being a pastor. And that's scary. It's really, really scary. And there's I just don't know how the heck they can do that. But they can stop the pastor from talking. They can actually shut down the pastor's church. And they could actually confiscate everything from the church. These guys are nothing but criminals, quite frankly. Oh, yes, Bill C-11. Yeah, expands the CRTC powers. Those are the guys who can do anything. They are in charge of any kind of television, radio, internet, all of that sort of stuff. And I tell you, it just goes from one thing to another. Of course, social streaming nowadays. And of course, now the Fed's trying to hook the Americans into kicking in $100 million or so that they can cover off the cost for social media posting any news events on there. And of course, they can restrict whatever you can see, and we've seen that before. And I'm sure everyone knows about algorithms, and the more often you do something, the more that you get to see this particular event. And the government is quite keen at that, and they have a really good partner that helps them on all this sort of stuff in the CRTC, as well as the media companies. And the one that we know is not much different than what we saw in Russia, where they had Pravda, and it's called I call it the Communist Broadcasting Corporation. It's known as CBC. They are providing all of the Liberals' talking points, and they are now going to be, guess what? Anybody puts anything on social media, YouTube, they are going to be the fact checkers. How do you become a fact checker? When you're spreading misinformation. I guess they will call whatever you put on misinformation. Yeah, C18, we're talking a bit about that. And, oh yes, C18. This allows the feds to take over your C18. I think it's 239, wasn't it? I think it's supposed to be 239. Anyway, for all you farmers out there, and I'm sure most of you already heard about the killing of all of the ostriches in BC. And that was the Canadian Food Inspection Agency gave the RCMP orders to kill all of those ostriches. That means that they can come to your farm, they can kill all of your animals, whatever it is, and under Bill C-293, they can actually shut down your farm, take all your product and machinery and equipment. I tell you, they have put everything in place so that they will become the owners of everything. And you know that Prime Minister Carney is a top-ranking member of the World Economic Forum. And what the World Economic Forum has said is that you will own nothing, but you'll be happy. I don't think I'm going to be happy when they try and take everything away. They might pay the bill themselves. Yes, Bill C-34, the backdoor one. Anybody here under the age of 16? Hey, that white-haired young fella at the back is under 16. Anyway, because you're under 16, they'll be able to stop you from going on the internet and scrolling on the internet. But this is also the back door that they can catch everyone else, including that white-haired teenager back there. And it didn't work in Australia. I don't know if anyone knows about what happened in Australia, but they had the same kind of a bill there. And what the teenagers did, of course, is they changed whatever it was they needed to do to say they were 18 or whatever the age is there, so that they could get on the internet. Anyway, this thing doesn't work, but it'll work for the feds because they'll be able to backtrack and track everything you do and shut you off as well. And of course, this allows them the biometrics. So this is more on the digital ID, physical ID, and creates more power for the cabinet. You know, these guys is unbelievable because as a cabinet minister, they can make up a law and they cannot be taken to court, even if it's proven to be wrong. They're hands-free, but you know what they can do? They can tell the guy in the white hair back there, if he's a friend of theirs, they can tell him to come to your house and he will have access to your house under the law, and he can search for whatever he wants. This is just very criminal activity based on a liberal party, which is really turning to be a communist party. And I think we could probably move on to the next one, Scotty. Surveillance. Yeah, I think they're already doing some of that stuff. And I posted something on one of the social media accounts the other day, and they sent me a notice saying, that doesn't fit nicely. And I think I called Carney a lying piece of shit, is what I did. Excuse me a second. Anyway, I get so disgusted when I think about all these darn bills. And, oh yes. And I think we've already heard some words from Art on China and what's going to happen in terms of the New World Order. Carney at one point said China was the worst thing that could happen.
Security threat to China, Canada is China.
We're heartened by the leadership of President Xi Jinping and the speed with which our relationship has progressed in recent months. And I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
So he wants to get in bed with China, but if anyone has read his book, basically it's all communist based. That's what he wants. That's what he wants for every Canadian, to have you be his subject. He will own everything that you have, and you won't have much say. However, I am actually very positive in terms of, I think our good friends to the south, and I know there's people who don't like President Trump. I think he's done lots for his country. He's a bit of a BSer at some point, but he's doing things because he loves his country. And I think he recognizes what's going on with Carney, the Liberal Party. And my belief is that the U.S. will be our savior in the end if Carney gets too close to China and tries to bring in their people. Now, another point that you may or may not have heard, that Prime Minister Carney opened up the military, and he's bringing in all these foreign military guys. And there's a bit of an infighting on some of them because I think some of them don't like each other. But you know what? I think his plan is when we get closer to our freedom, that he's going to want to send the troops after us. And you know which ones are going to come? It'll be the foreign ones that he hired. I'm not so sure all of our own would come after us. But anyway, this is such devastating stuff that's going on in our country. And we're here, basically, we don't really want to take this, but we need to get the message out to people everywhere we can. So I'm hoping that you folks will talk to your neighbors and let them know all the terrible things that they're proposing to do. And I've read a couple pieces that said by the end of this year, they'll have everything in place to turn this into another communist dictatorship under Carney. Anyway, please spread the word. Thanks for coming out. Thank you, Corrine.
He thought he would get away without me reading his biography. Scott is in more of an executive position now with the Alberta Prosperity Project. He's a great leader. I said, I need a biography. He says, I'm one of LaVar's sons. So, a freedom enthusiast who loves Jesus Christ. He wants you to know that there are no refunds after he starts talking, no matter how well they're deserved. So, anyway, Scott, thanks.
Thanks, Corrine. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Art and Dad and Tanner. I'm still working on my dad to improve him. This started last year, so his bio, like he needs to start off a little bit better. It's like he starts as a banker, moves on to evil HR director, and then politician. Like, come on. Like, how about, financial guru, director, leader of people, political analyst. Anyway, room for improvement for next year. But anyway, it's an honor to be here. Thanks to Corrine and to everybody who's come here tonight and everybody who's helped put this together. I'm sorry that all of the previous speakers were depressing. I'm going to work on making it a happy night. So, but I'd like to just steal a little bit from Dr. Frank Turek here. A little bit of audience participation. So who here is a child? Okay. Any former children here? Okay, that's just about everybody. The guy in the red shirt at the back, I don't know what his story is, but this is all about, as I think Tanner and Dad and Art talked about, family. And Corrine mentioned faith, family, freedom. So everything that we're doing here and what we're talking about tonight is just to help educate and enumerate. You don't really need the message because you're already here. But if we can help you to help us spread the message so that people know what's going on, because we're still fat and happy, right? We still got some money, right? There's not people necessarily stepping on our necks with their boots yet, but things are not looking good. And what's the best predictor of future behavior? Past behavior, right? So just a few points here, but you know, I grew up watching television, as probably many people did here, and one of my favorite shows was Adam 12. Anybody remember Adam 12? Yeah, classic. Two dudes driving around in a car with guns, being nice to people, solving all the problems in Los Angeles County. It was awesome. But that was, you know, that's how we looked at the law, right? They're there to help, right? But this country has changed dramatically. Who thinks leadership is important? See a show of hands. A couple of you, yeah. Okay. I don't think you can put a high enough value on leadership. Why? Because good leadership keeps things going. Great leadership makes things better. You know who's the most, just let's see a show of hands, I'll pick some people. Who's the most influential, effective prime minister, good or bad, in your lifetime? Joan? Anybody? Trudeau the Elder, okay. That's a competitor, yeah. I had him for early parts of my life, but I had the Trudeau the Younger. Can you imagine what he has done in a negative way, most effective? Just, he's destroyed everything. Does anyone have any faith in our institutions that we built up? Supreme Court, any of our ministries, federal, provincial, even our town councils. This is a lawless country. Our politicians disregard the laws. And I'll go on a bunch of tangents here. Eventually we'll get to the end and you can be free and run. But I'll try and go through some things. And if you have something that I've missed, because there's so many things, it's crazy, please stick your hand up because I want to hear from you. Because I want to steal your ideas for my next slideshow. So, rule of law, we're being ruled by laws. And Dad talked about the many C bills. Like that is the boot heel of communism or dictatorship or whatever going down our necks. Freedom of speech, right? Kind of key, right? Freedom of religion. Well, you think that's pretty important, wouldn't you? But these federal and provincial and even municipal politicians, they are so bold and many of them are so evil. You got to have some chutzpah to say that God's word is hate speech, right? If you honestly believe that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, then you probably wouldn't say those things. You would not say that parts of Deuteronomy and Ecclesiastes and Romans are hate speech, right? That's pretty bold. So if they're saying it's parts of hate speech, does that mean that the Bible that I hold in my hand that has those parts is now illegal? Is it illegal for Indigo to sell me a Bible with those parts? Wow. Pretty lawless. Certainly God's law has been disregarded, right? But this is how crazy it is. Would anybody have ever believed that years ago? I was like, it's just, a few sections from those, Romans is kind of big for me, but, whatever. Okay. But you know, there's no consequences. Anybody ever heard of SNC Lavalin? Yeah. Who lost their job on that? Jody Wilson-Raybould. They wanted to throw her under the bus, and her friend Jane Philpott, they both resigned. But nobody went to jail. Like, SNC's got a new name, and they're still getting contracts. So, I don't know. Kind of crazy. Yeah, I like our institutions. I'll go through it here a little bit. But, again, if I've missed an easy one, please do the layup. Score the points here, because it's so hard to remember everything. It's an avalanche. So the courts, hey, guess what? That mandatory minimum for child porn, hey, us Supreme Courters, justices, nah, we can't have that. Wow. They just said that the law was illegal. Isn't that crazy? You can't put somebody in jail for a minimum sentence, at least a minimum of a year. Like, what law are these guys reading? They don't make the law. Oh, sorry, they do. It's Canada. Sorry. I didn't read the Constitution enough. Some of the sentencing. Often it's a certain race or a immigrant or whatever trying to get citizenship, and they rape somebody. Like, is rape not a horrible thing? I grew up knowing that. You know it. But yet these judges will give them a very light sentence or let them off because they don't want to mess with their immigration status. What law is that? It's crazy. But there's so much of it, we miss it and we forget it and we get used to it. It's desensitized, right? When you're standing out in the sun for a hot day, you know, eventually you kind of get used to it, you start working out, right? Whatever. But no, this is nuts, man. The courts, like, look at Litch and Barber, right? They're almost done their time, and now they're appealing the charges that were dismissed. The full force of government, right? It's like the horse is running over them every day. And, you know, anybody who speaks up, and by the way, thanks, Max, for putting this on the internet. I'll expect a knock at 3 in the morning. Anyway, but this is how it is. It's crazy, but we need to fight, right? We need to stand up. Tanner, I think, spoke about property rights, and that's really a basis of if you don't have property rights, you don't really have any rights. If you read the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Alberta Bill of Rights, they both have a section that basically allows legislatures to legislate away your rights, as long as they can demonstrably prove it in a court of law that it was necessary. And that happened during the pandemic. You know, the Emergency Measures Act. Like, we're out of control. And then we've got Justice Wagner, the Chief Justice. This guy's awesome, by the way. So awesome that he made a bronze bust of himself, and it's in the Supreme Court building, so that everybody knows he's the boss. But he was making comments about the truckers, right? But he's not recusing himself from that case, the Emergency Measures Act invocation, because he's too awesome. And because there's no rule of law for him, right? Like, things are bad. Sorry if I'm a little understated here. I'll ramp it up here. So, criminal police. Wow. Did anybody see the stormtrooper incident in Lethbridge on video? Okay. All right, well, this one guy here, so you'll get the joke, but on May the 4th, which is a Star Wars holiday, so this young lady's wearing a stormtrooper uniform, the white uniform. She's got a blaster, a laser blaster, and she's in front of a sci-fi themed restaurant dancing. And somebody calls her in, and has anyone heard of the term swatting, where you'll phone the police and say somebody's got a gun or something? So they did this to this girl. She's dancing, cops roll up, and then they force her to go on the ground, right? They detain her, even though she's got the laser blaster, and her costume's probably like $1,000, and she's lying on the pavement, right? She's crying, and then some guy with an accent is filming this, and this guy's hilarious. He's great. And the sergeant rolls up, so now there's 3 cops. And he's yelling at this guy with the accent, and this guy's just chirping on him pretty hard, you know. And it was so dangerous that cop, that sergeant, got back in his vehicle and then drove it in to block the camera. He wasn't worried about the stormtrooper because the stormtrooper was under control. But these are the things. You remember the hockey player in Calgary during the pandemic? You know, the special constable's there, and he's like, I'm not doing this. I'm calling in the full cops. So 2 little cops come out, and they try and drag him down. Everybody else had left. He was playing hockey by himself. But they had to win. They had to be the boss. There's a lot of great cops. I go back to Adam 12, still love the police, okay? But there are no Reeds and Malloys in the videos that I see. Anyway, does Edmonton Police Service, the chief tried to do a good thing. They had a cop, Constable David Ahlstrom, stole from a homicide scene. So anybody watch Law & Order? Come on, man. There's got to be somebody. Okay. Does anybody like trial shows? Well, he kind of disturbed the scene, right? You know, kind of brought in reasonable doubt if they ever catch the killer or killers. That's kind of a big deal. Anyway, they did some integrity tests on him again. He wasn't the brightest bulb, and he got caught 2 more times. And then the chief fired him, but through the arbitration appeal or whatever, got his job back. And then we've got, I think it's Phillips, Shannon Phillips, can't remember her name. Anyway, former NDP MLA from Lethbridge. The Lethbridge police searched the database because they were mad because of some of the, stupid things that the NDP were doing. But breach of trust. One guy got demoted for a year. Another guy got demoted for a year, I think, something like that. Like, that's a pretty low bar. I think I could achieve that. Maybe I'll have a second career here. But this is lawlessness. We do not take care of things. We have allowed the destruction of our institutions. Can you really trust the cops? And then how many times are there people, like we know a guy in our organization, unfortunately his son was killed in custody. It happens. And there seems to be no consequences for these things. No courage to do the right thing. So, it's a bit scary. All right, federal, I'm sure you guys got to have some stuff here. The green slush fund, what's his name? Former Minister Guilbeault, right? Something like $45 million. All kinds of crime. McKenna, Minister McKenna, with her, Catherine McKenna, thank you. Minister McKenna, I believe, is $175 billion in infrastructure projects. 22,000 of them missing. Outrageous. Nobody went to jail. This is worse than SNC-Lavalin. SNC-Lavalin made a lot of noise, but this is nuts. All the money that we send to Ukraine, to Africa. Who here has heard of DOGE? DOGE? Anybody? Does anyone know what DOGE stands for? Okay, Department of Government Efficiency. Elon Musk was in there for a while, and he was doing some stuff, and he brought in, I can't remember the guy with he had a nickname or whatever. Anyway, this guy was a wunderkind, and he was doing all the computer searches and all this kind of stuff. And while I'm talking, they're going to pass around the bucket to pay for the hall and expenses. So contribute whatever you can. Appreciate it. So Doge found I think it was like $328 million, like just a drop in the bucket. And it was some kind of climate, LGBTQ plus S to, stop discriminating in Madagascar or Mozambique or somewhere. Well, guess what? They canceled it. 2 days later, the government of Canada picked it up. Like, you can't make this stuff up, right? We are a lawless country. We don't follow God's law. One of the best things that we could do is get the sin of Canada out of Alberta. And that's one of the things I'm working for. So look at all this stuff. We made CO2 a criminal, right? Those poor plants, they've been working with criminals all their lives. They didn't even know it. Like, it's outrageous. And so a lot of this stuff, we don't even realize, the effects that it has on individuals. Certainly the farmers out here understand some of the crazy stuff that happens. We talked about pensions, right? If you could have an extra $50K a year, that'd be a big deal. You could retire and you could travel, you could do whatever, right? You could buy a second or third home or cabin or whatever you want to do, or a boat. Man, Brookfield, wow. How many contracts does he have, right? It's crazy. And there's nothing we can do about it. You want to know why? Because the Attorney General's part of the government. The commissioner of the RCMP is basically a deputy minister. So they're not going to investigate the bosses, right? Hell, the RCMP leadership about 10 years ago was being investigated for stealing from their own pension fund. Did anybody remember that? I haven't even talked about Trudeau the Younger and how many ethics violations. Anybody know that he had? Yeah, he ran out of fingers and toes. This is how bad it is. They're coming after us with the C-bills. They're living off of our pension money, right? And they're also giving it to their friends in India, right? And I think it's going to Qatar next year. Tanner would probably know more than I would on that. But it's nuts. Is it even there? Who knows, right? Okay, I think that kind of covers it. But equalization, we all know how we feel about that. We all know how we voted, right? Got ignored on that one. Okay, provincial government. We were going to have a $9.4 billion deficit before President Trump started bombing Iran. Really? We're spending twice as much money as Notley did. Really? We are building debt for people who aren't born yet. We are stealing from them. They start with a negative. You're going to be paying taxes on this for the rest of your life. And you're not born yet. We're stealing from our future. And it's not even us. It's just we keep electing people that do this stuff. So we need to change that. Man. 9 ministers, 2 MLAs under Premier Kenney. So does anyone know of the Ingram and Scott versus Alberta case that Jeff Rath was involved with as a lawyer, lead counsel? So the Whistle Stop Cafe was running during the pandemic. The owner got arrested, did some time behind the gray bars there. And anyway, there was a suit. And Jeff Rath and his team, they subpoenaed all kinds of memos and stuff from the government that they presented in court and said that there was misfeasance of office. And in Justice Feasby's decision in the Ingram and Scott versus Alberta case, agreed that they were in misfeasance of office. Abuse of power, not doing their own things. Does anyone think that the government of Alberta acted lawfully in its mandates or its lockdowns? Any of that stuff? No, completely lawless. Things are broken, not just broken. The Wild West at least had a sheriff that would come to town or a marshal that would come to town and fix things up, right? Big Iron. Anybody know that song, Big Iron? Good times. All right. Municipal affairs. Crazy. Alberta Health Services, the contracting, right? There's corruption everywhere. But again, you know what the provincial government has? The same as the federal government. Minister of Justice and Attorney General are part of the government. So is the public safety officer, who's the top cop in the land. We got a problem here, and we need to fix that. How about an oversight branch? Something like that. Okay. Who here is involved in municipal politics? Either showing up or you ran. Anybody go to council meetings? Jim? Tom, I don't know where Tom ran away. Sorry, I bored him. Ian, I know, he's my buddy. We had a show for a little while. What was it called? Can we advertise our show on here? That's okay. Anyway, municipal politics. Okay, man, Calgary. Used to be a big Stampeders fan. Grew up loving that town. Bylaw 17M 2023. So, has anyone heard of the pastor who got arrested for protesting outside of a library when the drag queen was reading to children? Well, has anybody read the charter? Do you have freedom of speech and freedom of assembly? Sort of. I call them super privileges, temporary privileges, but yeah. So a bylaw, not even a real law. It's not, I don't even know if it's above a regulation. The city can do this. And guess what? Up to 90 days in jail. It's not even a criminal code offense. Give me a break. That's nuts. Freedom of assembly, freedom of speech. You don't have to like what he said. You know, and the crazy thing is, how many times has anyone ever heard of a murderer or a rapist being told by the judge that they shall apologize to the victim? Anyone ever? Pastor Reimer was supposed to apologize to the librarian, according to the judge. Give me a break. Lawless. We are lawless. And then, you know, oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it. That was, I think, basically the last slide. But municipalities, again, they're spending money like crazy. Deficits. Medicine Hat, God bless them. I love my city. I've been about 20 plus years in deficits. We had one solar plant, and we shut it down because it was no good. But you know what? We're going to do better on the second one. And the $66 million that we're borrowing for it is totally never going to pay off. But this is what we do. So we've got the courts allowing lawless, horrible, violent behavior. We got the cops. Even when the chief does a great job firing the stupid thief, we have a system that allows that guy to keep his job and probably ruin more court cases. I bet they sit him down in he's probably in the properties because, you know, he knows how to steal stuff, so hide it. So we'll put him in the cage where all the evidence is. But they wouldn't want him on the streets because if he arrests somebody, very easy to impugn his reputation on the stand, right? Add that reasonable doubt. So we got the courts, we got the Supreme Court justice, won't recuse himself when he's clearly tainted himself before the case even got to, I think even before, well, yeah, before it even got to any court, right? And we got the federal government, like, how many ethics violations? How much money are they laundering? How much money have they lost? Like, even just losing the money would be, you know, almost a crime of negligence, right? But we know they're stealing it. That's nuts. And then now they're coming out with lawless laws. They're coming after God, right? Who here would feel good if I stood up here and said that God's speech is hate speech? The first question you need to ask yourself, what is the lethal radius of lightning? Sorry, I thought it was funny, which is important to me, not to you. Anyway, it's nuts. We need to fix things. We need to show up. Who here's a member of a party? I don't care which one. Who shows up to annual general meetings, either of your constituency or of your party? Who's going to start showing up? Come on. Okay. Well, I'm obviously not selling it here, but that's okay. I thank you for your time. Please get involved. There's a great Albertan who's gotten himself in trouble a little bit. At times, he takes a beating, but he's absolutely right. I don't care if you got great ideas. All I want you to do is show up, and that's what we need to do. So thank you. God bless you, and thanks, Corrine, for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Scott. I said it's a good thing that we're all from good stock. If not now, when? And if not, who? You. You know how that goes. I just can't see the gifts and the things that we've enjoyed not being available for our future generations. So the time is now. Anyway, is there any questions? We'll just have a short 5-minute question and answer period. No, I'll just, I think if you shout out your question, we'll repeat it, or who you would like to
There are some people who has questions online as well too. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand. I'll come to you with the microphone. If you, what I'd like to do is, because this is being live streamed right now, as it is, so people on the stream can hear what you say right now. So if you have questions, I'll get to you. Just raise your hand. Please do not do. There we go.
Who is it to, Ian?
Tanner, let's say in the next 5 years, the Premier of Alberta develops a set of testicles and a spine and actually pushes the federal government to cough up whatever magic number is Alberta's share of the CPP. How do we move what then becomes the Alberta Pension Plan into what you spoke about earlier, where we would make more money for ourselves? How would that work?
That's a very good question. Well, you would do it gradually. So let's suppose that in the next few years, as mentioned, the Premier negotiates with the government, the federal government, and says we're going to start our own Alberta Pension Plan, and therefore we are entitled to our share of the current asset pile that is present in the Canadian Pension Plan. And that share would be very significant. You know, that share would be massive. So whatever that number is, right, there's debate and discussion. It comes over from the Canadian Pension Plan into an Alberta Pension Plan. And it forms the basis for the entire plan itself. Now, if we were going to adopt the proposal that I discussed with you tonight, then I think you would start by using that asset pile as the backbone of the pension plan itself. So remember, 1, those of us who have paid into the Canadian Pension Plan are owed a certain amount of money forever and ever and ever and ever, at least until we die, right? Regardless of whether there's a new Alberta Pension Plan or not. So considering that we are owed a certain amount of pension forever and ever and ever and ever, we have to make sure that there is actually money to pay pensioners who are owed that money. So that comes in part from the backbone. But more than that, if you decide to, pursue an annuity or something along those matters after you've paid into this new pension for a little while, then the pension manager would have a backstop by which to say, yes, we can guarantee your pension payouts for life, even if 1 year is drier than the next, even if 1 year is more difficult than the next. So, to be simple, I suppose, that pool, that pile of asset would simply form the foundation of the plan itself. And then you would proceed with what was discussed tonight. Private individuals investing private monies into a private pension system so that when it comes time to pull their pension, they are able to pull as much or as little of it as they please. That asset pile is just that. It's a foundation upon which to build the system. It's a guarantee that you won't miss payments. It's a guarantee that we can use this annuity idea. It's a guarantee that seniors who are owed pension will not go without, and so on. That's a very good question. But we are owed it.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll get the microphone. I'll get the microphone. No exceptions.
Dave, who's your question to? Tanner.
I don't really need that. Tanner, I just want to know if the Canada Pension Plan is still going broke in this year.
That's another good question. So I'm very careful because we, as it stands, if you look at the numbers as they are presented to us, then everything is going swimmingly with the Canadian Pension Plan and with its assets. Now, note my wording, right? It's as the numbers are presented to you and I. But there is a difficulty in a lot of, in my opinion, the pension's estimations of its value. What I mean to say is, a lot of its investments are in private equity, and they use, private equity funds. What happens there is you have a private equity firm that sees a failing business, let's say, and it buys a failing business for $1 million. And then, after buying that business for $1 million, it flips that business, it economizes, it takes out unnecessary expense, and it supposedly builds that business back up. And then it says, this business is now worth $10 million versus the million that it was worth before. Therefore, if you have invested with us, look at your assets, $10 million compared to the $1 million before. The danger is that perhaps the valuation is incorrect. Perhaps when it comes time to sell in the market, maybe that business which was estimated to be worth 10 million is actually only worth 3 million. Maybe nobody wants to buy it for, more than 4 million or 2 million, whatever the number is. And so the valuation, the estimation changes drastically. And the real picture of how large the pool is does not reflect the initial estimation of what we're told the pool is. But truth be told, the difficulty or the problem is actually different than what we expect. So we often look at the fund's performance as a whole and say, how well is the fund doing with a macro picture? Believe it or not, I'm more concerned with my individual performance. What do I care whether the fund is making $1 trillion or $1 million every year if my payout is exactly the same? This is one of, I think, the most mistaken arguments in favor of a Canadian pension plan. You hear time and time again that according to the books, according to the official numbers, the Canadian pension plan is performing marvelously. Fine, I'll grant it, sure, whatever. We'll say that they are earning 10 or 9 or 11% on interest on their investments year after year. Let's grant that. Let's admit for the sake of argument that it's true. The next part to ask is, does that have any effect on how well you are doing with your pension returns or not? It doesn't. If the fund is earning 100% returns on its investment one year, and 50% returns the next, and 10% returns the year after, your individual pension checks are the same. They're not correlated to the size of the Canadian pension plan or to its performance. You are paid out based on not how well the fund is doing, but how much money you made, or at least contributed to the CPP while working, how many years you contributed to the CPP, and the age at which you pulled your pension. So, when the gentleman here asks a good question, how well is the CPP really doing, I actually reduce it and I say, go further and ask how well are we really doing? Because that way, even if the CPP is doing well, whether it's doing well or whether it's not, the answer is the same. Our returns are brutal with the CPP, right? Like for a man like myself, when I retire, when you adjust for inflation, my returns will really be negative. They'll be like 2% tops. 2.5%. The oldest among your community might be earning a 3 or a 3.5% rate of return on his or her Canadian pension plan contributions. That's the best. But for the rest of us, it's between 2 and like 2.5%. It's minimal. So, to take a long answer and shorten it, when that question is asked, or when someone argues with you and says the Canadian pension plan is doing so well, you reply to them, that's the same thing as saying that my insurance broker is doing so marvelously. What does it matter how much money they're making if I get gypped on the deal? Same here. Whether they're going under or not, right? The point is our returns are abysmal, and we can do better. So, good question, and lots to investigate.
Do we have a question for just an online question here? This is for LaVar, actually. I have a question for LaVar. This is Grace is here. Question for LaVar. I personally think that Pierre could have done more to prevent the foreclosures. What are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, say that again.
It says, I personally think that Pierre could have done more to prevent the foreclosures. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't have any good words for Pierre or Justin or Carney. In my mind, they couldn't do anything good for us. They would do everything bad for us. And that's just because I believe they are evil and I don't see any positive stuff that they could do. And I don't think they have done anything good for us.
Whoa, hold on.
Oh, Pierre.
I believe the question was maybe about Pierre Poilievre. What could he have done to stop the floor crossing?
Oh, my friend Pierre. I actually worked with Pierre, and I really quite liked him as a smart young guy. I have to say, though, I'm disappointed in Pierre Poilievre because during the last budget, he actually had a couple of his people hiding behind the curtain and didn't vote when they could have voted and stopped the budget for going through. And so I'm very, very disappointed from that standpoint. At this point in time, I'm not sure what he can do. He can't really fix the country. Nobody can fix the country unless they actually open the Constitution. They rejig all of the seats. So, for example, in PEI, they have 4 MPs. Guess what the population of PEI is? It's about 125,000 people. And in Alberta, that would provide a whole lot more MPs. And the same thing in terms of the Senate. You got to fix the Senate. That's the only way that this thing could actually fix the country, is that we'd have to have equal and respectful presentation for each and every province. Ontario is getting screwed basically in terms of the number of MPs as well. It's really, really sad that this has happened. And we had, and I just forgotten the guy's name right now, but basically when Alberta was becoming a province, they wanted to make sure that every wealth of Alberta was made for the betterment of Easterners. That really tells the story.
I think he's Sifton, I think.
Yes, you're correct. It is Sifton.
Clifford Sifton, 1984.
Okay, for Scott. Make you get up and run. So, Scott, seeing that Danielle Smith has now taken control and can dictate who can and cannot run as an MP, she has the final sign-off, and she's now partnered with Mark Carney in the Liberal parties. How can we control or have any say or pull or power in the Conservative MPs or UCP?
Yeah, well, the big thing, like I said, 2 words: show up. So there are constituency association meetings. Every year they have to have an annual general meeting to elect people to the board. So show up for those. Same thing for all parties, frankly. They'll have a provincial annual general meeting, a great time to show up. You're correct in Bill 14 from last year was put forward. It changed a few things, but it also changed the Elections Act, allowing it used to say a party official shall sign the MLA candidate's nomination paperwork. They changed it to the leader of the party. So a leader of a party gave herself power over her party through legislation. I see that as a slight, very minimal conflict of interest. I think it's actually one of the dirtiest things through legislation for your party. So if the Premier decides not to sign a candidate's paperwork, it doesn't stop that, she has to sign it essentially after they're nominated. Doesn't prevent anybody from being nominated through the party rules. All it means is that the leader of the day would tell their party board that, yeah, I'm not going to sign this person's candidacy. So that seat either remains empty or they have to have another runoff for nomination. That is a pretty big hammer to swing. So I would imagine that the leader of the day would probably reserve that for somebody that they really, really were afraid of, or that they really, really couldn't stand, which really kind of gives the middle finger to all the members of that constituency who nominated that person. And unfortunately, this is what happens in parties, and we can see it. The membership, we talk about grassroots all the time, right? And that's what happens. People in power use the grassroots, but then they have governance in their party that does not protect the grassroots. It takes the power away from the grassroots and gives it to the leader. Anybody here ever had a performance review? Yeah. How many of you had it every day when your boss said, I don't like that? Max is self-performance reviewing. So leadership review is kind of, for the most important, and I'd say it's probably the most important job in the province. That should happen every year, right? Not kind of randomly, maybe every 3 years. And people say to Scott, shouldn't have to worry about that. It's like, well, she doesn't have to worry if she does what the members of the party tell her to do, right? And that's the whole point of having a party, is that the leaders who get elected do what you elected them to do. So, your answer, show up. That's all you can do. Get involved, put your name forward, bug somebody who's really good to do the job. Support them, get the signatures that they need, donate, knock on doors, sell memberships. That's what you can do. That's what we can do. And that's what a lot of us have done, and that's why we're here. We just need to convince people who aren't here to do those things. Are we good?
Yes.
I'm stopping payment on that check, by the way, Doug.
Okay, my question's for Scott, and probably LaVar as well. In the fall of 2024, at the UCP AGM, the Black Hats, in concert with the Alberta Prosperity Project, brought to the floor of the plenary an Alberta Rights, Freedoms and Responsibilities document. Whatever happened to it?
Well, I'll go a little bit of tangent here, so, and don't blame us. But Dad and I helped get now Premier Smith elected in the by-election for Brooks Medicine Hat in the fall of 2022. Dad nearly died with the snow and rain and sleet. Could have fallen and broken a hip, but he did it anyway, and God bless him for doing that. We worked to try and get Premier Smith to work on rights and freedoms. We had some success, and we eventually, Black Hats in here and elsewhere, drafted a Bill of Rights. We ran it past the government 3 times, and and good on Premier Smith for putting us together with people. And then we ran it past the party, and the party board was over the moon. They actually put it as a special resolution in 2024. So we were kind of shocked on that, and so that was great. Timing is everything. So the Monday before that AGM, the province dropped, I believe it was Bill 21, a act to amend the Alberta Bill of Rights. And it was a turd. And we actually got invited to a meeting the day before the AGM, and they said they were going to table the bill, and then they were going to hear what people had to say at the AGM. And our resolution was put forward at the AGM. It was in the program, like right near the end. And it was overwhelming. It was about 95% in the room that were in favor of it. And all humility, we drafted it knowing that the government could do a better job. They got a team of lawyers, all this experience. But we just wanted to show that some, local folks from Medicine Hat area, and a good fellow from Bonnyville and another fellow from Cold Lake could draft something that they could use as some ideas. Here's some things that we've heard from the people we talk to that want for rights and freedoms. Now, we get them all from God, right? Okay? But we do need them enumerated to a certain extent in legislation, right? Whether it's common law or a Bill of Rights or a charter or whatever, so that we know what the rules are, what we can and can't do, or at least what we can do, right? And so that the government knows. And unfortunately, they did one minor amendment to their bill after the AGM, and it was pretty much a word salad thing. Unfortunately, the Bill of Rights as it stands now, and we'll probably we should put that on the website. What is it, blackhatsalberta.ca? I'm saying it like I don't know it, but give us a day or two, check out blackhatsalberta.ca, and you'll see what the Alberta Bill of Rights used to look like, what they added, and then what they deleted is crossed out. And you'll see we used to have the enjoyment of property. We don't have that anymore. We were given a new property right. The government cannot take your property without just compensation. That's not a right. That's an acknowledgement that the government can take your property. And in their infinite wisdom, they took language from Section 1 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And Section 1 basically writes off the entire charter. Basically, in a free and just society, as long as the legislature or the government proves in a court of law, a legislature can write away some of your rights through legislation. That's why I call them super temporary privileges. We don't really have any rights under our Canadian government. We have rights under God. Property, Tanner pointed out property rights. I mean, what's the seventh commandment? Thou shalt not steal. What's the ninth? That was the wife specifically, but the 10th is all his stuff and people. Anyway, all good stuff, but we have property rights in there, right? Recognition that we have stuff, own stuff. So that Bill of Rights is actually worse than it was before. You can sue the government, but you can never get any money. So why would you sue the government? Please stop beating me. Please stop beating me, right? So a lot of people aren't interested in that stuff. It's horribly boring. Some people think it's really complicated. You need to be a lawyer. No. When you get a chance, please read the Constitution of Canada. Okay? The 1867 Act, Part 6. If you just read that, Section 92, Provincial Areas of Authority, you'll see what Premier Smith, give her kudos, and Dr. Peterson, November 17th, 2022, she had an interview. She's in the red blazer. It's about 90 minutes. I think she's been interviewed by him a few times, but watch that one. She said, we're going to take back every area of authority that we have ceded to the Government of Canada. She also said, here's what I think Quebec wants to do, which is, this is what I'm going to do, right? I think that they want to collect all taxes, and at some point in the future, remit only to the federal government their fair share. So what does that mean? If you know the distribution of legislative authorities, it says in Section 92, provincial legislatures have the exclusive legislative authority. Those are three words for verbatim. So that means only provincial legislatures can make laws in relation to these matters. And I think 92.8 is hospitals. So that's healthcare. The feds have marine hospitals, so that would be military healthcare, right? So what does the federal government do? They pass a budget every year. They tax us for money that they transfer in healthcare transfer payments. Well, I thought we had exclusive legislative authority. Anyway, super tangent, I'm back to it. They may have used a comma or a semicolon. They may have used that our rights are most important during bad times. That's about it, really. So please do not blame us. Oh.
I will pass the microphone.
Will you put this guy on so I know his name? The middle guy?
That's Sean Buckley.
Tell the crowd that, and then I'll tell my story.
Sean Buckley.
Okay, he's on reels here today, and the Constitution, according to him, is under British law, and everything about it is ruled by the King, Charles, right now. And all the things he said, he has the ultimate authority, and the Canadian government really doesn't have any say to it. And he talked about the Privy Council, that they rule it. I learned about that. I don't know nothing about it now, but that's what was said on that reel today. Maybe our lawyer friend can question that one. I'd have to see exactly what was said before I'll comment it. When Canada's Constitution set up, the right of the king is still the king because he's still the head of our country, but it was transferred to in the right of Canada. So we don't have a British king ruling over us. We have a appointment of a representative of the king that rules over us, and it's different. But I'd have to see exactly what he said. It's a complicated issue.
Well, I think we've had enough to sleep on tonight. So I just, I've got my better half talking. You come on up.
I have a question for Tanner, and I don't know if it's true. I've seen a lot of misinformation, but I read that our Prime Minister Carney managed to take $100 billion from the Canada Pension Plan and send it off to India. Is that correct, or is that misinformation? Because he's not supposed to touch the Canada Pension Plan.
I think the best answer would be that it requires more information. I'm going to appeal to Art. He's right. Like, you know, officially the Canadian Pension Plan is supposed to be entirely separate from the federal government. But there are obvious conflicts of interest, even in the appointment process, because the appointments of the members to the board of the Canadian Pension Plan are executed by the federal financial minister. So very clearly there isn't this ultimate separation that we have so often heard about. And if there's one thing that we know about government, it's that they love to plunge their hands into places where their hands don't belong. So I will do a bit of digging and give you a more proper, appropriate answer in a day or two. Good question.
Well, that's letting your husband have the last word. Tanner's going to be speaking again in Coaldale on the 6th of August, and that'll be at the Civic Center along with Mitch, and you're invited to hear their thoughts. So I think it's all up to us to carry the torch and to talk to our neighbor, to be informed.
Who's going to be?
And we just really, really do thank you all for coming and for sharing the evening.
So who's going to be on the 6th? That will be Mitch, Tanner, and who else?
Just Mitch and Tanner.
Okay, I'm Mitch again.
So you're all invited.
Just to let you people know, we do have some lawn signs, and we do have the pegs to hold them on your lawn, or you can screw them on your car if it's an old one. That way they can't rip it off too easy. We've been finding out some of these little signs we put on billboards. People love the paper so much that it's gone the next day. So I don't know why there's a paper shortage, but I guess the backside is still blank. So if you guys want to have some yard signs, we have these from APP here, and feel free to take more than one because my garage needs some room for my car.
And I would like to also thank all the people who are watching online. We have about 100 people watching online, which is great. all over the place, including the States. And we'll see you on the next time then.